through these, let's say we had a rating scale, 1 to 5. Let's say you wanted to make this into a rating scale for the professional learning community that is supporting your work now. And let's say we had 1 for not at all and 5 for really, really being put in place. So the first one there is, in your professional learning community at this point, knowledge and learning are valued for what they can contribute to the community. In other words, the community actually sees learning as a pathway to the future. Now, I know all of you think that because that's why you're here. But to what extent does your learning community, the community in which you operate, actually believe that? It may totally believe it. You might give it a 5. And you also need to say, when people are actually believing that, what are they doing? If in fact the group sees literacy knowledge about how to teach literacy as being critical to the pathway to the future, what will they be doing? What will they be prioritising that over? When you have staff discussions in staff meetings, how much time is given to that as opposed to where to put the rubbish bins? So one issue is that the new knowledge is really seen as critical to your path, much more important than some other things that need to be dealt with. And so the question here is, if you were engaged in that first activity, looking at how you could use knowledge, use literacy knowledge over the next few months to improve performance, say, in term 1 next year, what sort of things would actually be seen as so important as distract you from that? Would it be a discussion about where to place the rubbish bins? Or what would be the things that would cause someone to say, leave that, I want you to do this? That's a criterion in terms of how important it is to the school, how important it is to the community. Secondly, in the community, members have a shared vision of the goals, and each of them owns, I'm sorry, I've left out the, each of them doesn't ow, each of them owns aspects of the vision. That was one thing we did at Belfield, where the school principal had a particular vision for the school, and he had this vision that all the children could learn literacy, that all the teachers could teach it, and that was almost not to be challenged. That was taken for granted. That was his working position. But one of the things that we talked about doing there was allocating parts of that vision to different parts of the school. And so the P to 2 guys took the running on one part, the 3 to 4 guys on another part. And how they did that was more their responsibility, how they were going to do it. So John had this view that overall, that was what mattered. Literacy improvement was what mattered. And in fact, in most cases, anything else that came up in terms of that first criterion actually was given second place for a while. Literacy improvement was the focus. But the vision wasn't his. The vision was allocated to different people. And it was important that they be able to take the running on it. So it's not only having the big picture, you obviously need to have a picture of what it's going to look like in each area. And it's important that I would see it as your role in managing the way in which the different aspects of the vision are partitioned out. So there were some things that were not negotiable, but there are other aspects that were totally negotiable. They were totally, up to anyone, to different people in the school to manage. The third was that the school had an idea about what it knew at any time. So because in a professional learning community, you are bringing together your knowledge You know what you know at any time. You know what you know about literacy. And when someone raises an issue, say, hey, the kids are having difficulty in this area, you can say, yep, we're going to target that in 2 terms' time, because at this point we're targeting this, and next we're going to do that. So you don't need to be having everything in place at once. If you're learning, it needs to be manageable for you. And so the school does know what it knows, and if people raise a problem with literacy, either we can say, here is how we deal with it in this school, or, yes, we are going to deal with that. We recognise that. We're learning something else at this point. The 4th point is that the school knows how to learn. The school knows how to learn. If I'm talking about an individual child learning in any of your classes, you will know when the child has learned something. They'll be able to do something different. They'll be able to undo it in a sustained way, possibly. So, if we think to each of your schools, what has your school learnt recently? What is your school doing differently now from what it might have been doing at the beginning of this year in terms of literacy? Well, I'd hope that all the schools here were doing things differently now from what they were doing in February, and I'm sure they are. But in a learning community, the school does know how to learn. And the only way you learn how to learn is to have time to think about what worked for you. You were hit with this challenge, you changed your practice. What was it that you did? What was done in order to learn? Because the more a school builds its knowledge about how to learn, then the better it's going to be able to learn in the future. And again, that was a very important aspect that I really tried to draw out at Belfield. That not only would the school be learning new literacy, but it would be learning how to learn. So we could take shortcuts. So that it took a while to actually get the program going. It took a while to embed the program and get things started. But once the teachers had started to learn it and they could actually see that the kids could do different things and that their teaching was having a real impact, once they could see this, and once we talked about how they were going to learn, then, or how you do learn, it made it much easier. And underpinning this are the notions that we've talked about, you know, respect and trust. And we need to bear in mind that respect and trust are not just words, they are actions. How do you do trust? What are you doing when you're doing trust? What are you doing when you're doing respect in a professional learning situation? Because if I'm working in a school and I lose my trust in someone else, it's much harder to win it back than not to lose it in the first place. And it may be that, you know, I may be working with someone else. I may have a boss who I wouldn't trust as far as I could throw them in most cases, but in this particular domain, I would trust them. Because I've seen that they've done things that would lead me to believe I can trust them in that case. So I don't have to trust, you know, the person all the way. It's my trust is really domain specific. It's specific to particular areas.